Hi, so in this fifth part on maximising Retribution damage in Hellfire Citadel Mythic, we're going to have a look at Xhul'horac and Tyrant Velhari. But first what I'd like to do is just put things in a bit of context. You might be looking at your logs, for example, especially percentiles. People focus on the percentiles first and think to yourself, oh, well, maybe it's not that good. Just bear a couple of things, but at the same time, sometimes people excuse ones that are genuinely poor. So how much of an effect does kill time and item level have? Well, if you look at these are my recent logs for Xhul'horac. And you can see, it seems to have been going steadily up, steadily up, steadily up. And then suddenly yesterday, bang, down. What happened there? Was I off my game? Anything like that? Not especially, no. In fact, it was fairly consistent. What I've done, what you'll notice if you look down, the duration from top to bottom, you'll notice a very interesting pattern. The duration increases. There are no anomalies there. The duration is increasing every single time. So what happens if we plot a graph of duration in seconds against your DPS? Well, you get a graph that looks a bit like this. Very linear relationship. In fact, there's only one little anomaly here, and we can explain that very simply. It looks like I'm doing more damage than I should be for that kill time, and the reason is because my item level was higher. I'd got some better gear. So in actual fact, this particular kill time, and this is yesterday's kill time, it was a much longer kill time than it's normally been. We've been taking a few outs, although I actually don't think it was the outs that were the thing there. I don't know what was going on there. But we nonetheless had a longer kill time. But I had better item level than I'd been doing it for the past few weeks. So my DPS was actually higher than might be expected. So it's worth bearing that in mind when you're looking at your own percentiles. The other thing you look at, sometimes you'll naturally, when you want to see how to do a mythic fight well, go for the very top passes, and absolutely do that, but have a look at them carefully. Don't just go to them and look at what trinkets they appear to be using and which talents they appear to be using as if that will be ideal for you. Look at what else they're doing. Are they doing something that you simply wouldn't be allowed to do in the fight? I've mentioned before about you see some top passes on Gorefiend where they're in Seal of Righteousness and they're cleaving the hell out of everything. Whereas normally you wouldn't even be allowed to use Glyph of Mass Exorcism, and quite right too. No cleave at all. Also, don't just look at that person's log. Go to the actual log, look at the rankings tab, and have a look at everyone else. What you often find is that where one person does really well, other people in their raid, a lot of other people are doing really well as well. Because when everyone's doing really well, it contributes to an overall faster kill time, and kill time is very, very important. I remember in Siege of Orgrimmar, for example, getting a rank 6 on Iron Juggernaut, and it was purely because just obviously I had good RNG, and so did everyone else. One of our rogues got a rank 1 that lasted for several weeks. It was just everyone just suddenly had stunning luck on the pull and got maximum benefit out of our cooldowns at the start. All there was to it. At the same time, sometimes people will look at a percentile and go, oh, well, it's because we take too long to kill it, or it's because my item level's too low. So, you don't want to use it as a shield so you don't improve, but at the same time, don't beat yourself up too hard with it. Okay, so when it comes to the two bosses, different guilds tackle them in different orders. Some people do Tyrant first, some do Xhul'horac first. My personal take on it is that Xhul'horac is the easier of the two bosses, but there's more personal responsibility involved. And RNG can also cause communication issues. For example, you get Fell Surge, but you're normally the one to stun the imps next. Or you're the next one to soak a black hole, but you've got the fire debuff. Things like that. And that's a test of your communication. If the information isn't communicated and acted upon, you end up in trouble, and that easily leads to a wipe. Tyrant, on the other hand, doesn't have the RNG biting you in the arse in the same way. But the fight does have some soft DPS checks. For example, the faster you get through phase 2, the easier a time you'll have in phase 3. So it's a bit more brutal from that point of view. But it's collectively, it's about carrying out your role well. There aren't a lot of external things to do as well. The only 2 bits of personal responsibility are making sure that range move correctly and promptly with Edict, and making sure that everyone stands still when they get the impaling strike. Seriously, moving around like a madman with this causes lots of unnecessary hassle and damage. Just stand still, pop a cooldown, and then when it's fired off, step to the side so you don't get the extra little mini explosion. Right, so Tyrant Velhari first. I would highly recommend Libram of Vindication and Seraphim. You've got the usual issue at the start with Seraphim not lining up ideally with the ring, and it's possible this could happen on the second use as well, depending on when it's used. I've done this both ways with different guilds. If it's used when the Harbinger appears in phase 2, then you should be able to line Seraphim up with it, and indeed any other future use of Avenging Wrath and the ring. As long as you're mindful of the boss's health. Because what you will do, when you can see that the Harbinger is about to come out, you know the ring is going to be used any time now. If you would naturally pop Seraphim at that time, just delay it. Spend your holy power instead on a Templar's Verdict. Okay? And just wait and make sure you've got it. Even if for a couple of seconds, no more than that, if for a couple of seconds it means you don't use any abilities, then don't. Leave it. Make sure that it lines up with the ring and your Avenging Wrath as far as possible. Okay? Next. The other tactic, which is the one I do at the moment with the guild I'm in now, is to use it on the 3-minute mark so it lines up with other people's cooldowns. Now, if it's used exactly on the 3-minute mark, you have the same problem as at the start, in that your Seraphim will not exactly line up with it. And you could argue there is now, because that's 2 out of the 3 ring usages will not line up with Seraphim, is there now an argument for use Final Verdict? The answer is potentially. There is an advantage in Final Verdict in that it allows you to weave whenever there are 3 ancients that spawn during the fight. And the first 2 of them, there's absolutely nothing wrong with cleaving them down. Even the second one, as long as you're focusing on the boss at that point. So you can weave in Final Verdict and Divine Storm. The Sovereign is a different matter, really. When you want to get that down, you want to get it down like now. But I'll come on to that anyway later. So if it's going to go exactly the 3-minute mark, there might be a case then. But I would say try it out. I've tried both out, and I still find that I prefer Seraphim, even in those situations. Now, speaking of cleaving, you want to be in Seal of Righteousness whenever either of the first 2 ancients are up. Okay? Don't switch during Avenging Wrath, so switch ahead of time if you would use Avenging Wrath when you would naturally want to switch anyway. And also, but do switch out back to Truth at times when the Harbinger is not out, because there's usually about 10% of the boss's health to go between Ancients, only one Harbinger. Between Ancients, sorry. If, by the way, you have to do any interrupting of the Harbinger, because you'll be focusing the boss at this point, I would recommend you had a interrupt macro that sort of targets the Harbinger, interrupts, and then target last target. So you're going back to the boss, focusing the boss. At the time when the Harbinger is up, this is the time when, like phase 2, what's really important is the beast the boss's health down. You need to get into phase 3 immediately, because your maximum health and maximum health of the entire raid is being reduced the longer phase 2 lasts. And that's going to cause problems in phase 3, of course, when you're potentially taking damage from the despoiled ground. Hopefully not too much, but still. So you need to make sure that you're maintaining high damage on Velhari during this point. Have a look, go to your logs, find the section of the fight where the Harbinger is up, but the boss is still in phase 2, and check your damage at that point. Is it high? It needs to be high. It doesn't have to be top, but it has to be high. Okay. In the last phase, I would tend to use Truth, though, rather than switch between them, because the thing, especially once the Sovereign is dead, the last Ancient, because you don't want to be in a position where you have a close wipe with the boss left on 100k health and you were using Seal of Righteousness, because that would, your censure, it doesn't do loads of damage, but it would have done that damage over that time, because you get a damage buff in the last part of the fight. So don't forget that. But for other times when there's an ancient up, Seal of Righteousness, yeah, absolutely. In terms of Avenging Wrath, depends on what your kill time is. The first time I killed this boss, I was using Avenging Wrath each minute up until the end of the second phase, at which point I saved the final Avenging Wrath for when we were using when we were on the Sovereign using the ring. Now, on this particular fight, I cocked it up spectacularly last night, because, as you can see, the ring's been popped there. I've already had my Avenging Wrath going, because I don't know, I took complete leave of my senses, and I used Avenging Wrath once I was able to get solid DPS on the Sovereign. And the consequence of that was that I was not lining up my Avenging Wrath exactly with the ring, which meant that I was only getting the scrag end of the Avenging Wrath, the normal 20% buff, as opposed to the first 10 seconds where you've got that stacking buff that goes all the way to 50%. So yeah, that was bad. I would have done much better if I had have just waited. So to summarise on Velhari, in terms of specifically mythic damage, I would definitely go for pure single target Libra Vindication with the macro to make sure that you're always going to use your Crusader Strike on the boss, even if you're targeting an ancient. You might have to, especially in the last phase, because it's not always easy to keep the Sovereign right next to the boss, especially when you're moving from the despoiled ground. So you might have to do a little bit of positioning, making sure you're facing the boss, trying to face both of them if they're a little bit apart. But in terms of the rest of the fight, work out when to use Avenging Wrath. Definitely use Avenging Wrath at the start. Definitely use it on the 1 minute mark. And then obviously on the 2 minute mark. Or if you're going to wait, if you're going to use the ring when the Harbinger appears, you might want to delay that a little bit. So you've got but if the ring's been used on the 3 minute mark, then use your Avenging Wrath on your 2 minute mark. Use it again on the 3 minute mark when the ring goes off, Seraphim goes off, and all the rest of it. And then, wait until you can use your final one for the final ring. Okay? And that's effectively it. Okay, so when it comes to Xhul'horac, first thing to note is that your overall damage will be very dependent on how much damage you're doing to the imps. This in turn is dependent on Fel Surge. If you get absolutely spammed by Fel Surge, as I almost always do, then you will miss a lot of time on the imps. Now, the ideal way to maximise damage on the imps, and it's important that the imps die ASAP, is to pop Avenging Wrath about 4 seconds before they're due to spawn. This makes sure that you've got about 5 or 6 seconds when you've got the highest stacks of your Avenging Wrath available to absolutely beast them down. Drop your Light's Hammer if that's available. It's not going to be available on every imp spawn, but then neither is Avenging Wrath. Just as they land, so that when they're gripped in, it'll be in there, and you can go ham. Make sure you've got your Final Verdict buff and your preferably 5 Holy Power. And that's the ideal way to do with it. However, if you get Fel Surge at this time, you will find yourself running away from anything you can do damage to during the most powerful period of your Avenging Wrath. So, in the immortal words, do you feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? If you don't, and I shouldn't, I don't know why I sometimes do it, because you are going to get rammed by Fel Surge potentially, then you're better off not. By all means, drop the Light's Hammer if that's available, but Avenging Wrath, yeah, it's not ideal having the most powerful portion of your wings up when you are moving away from the boss. With the Avenging Wrath, in terms of how much you can get away with using it, just make sure you've got one ready for the final 20% burn. Use it when there are imps up, obviously. When you use it when there are a maximum number of mobs up, goes without saying. And make sure you've got one ready for the final 20% burn at all costs, when the ring will inevitably be used again. Now, how many times the ring is used depends on your kill time. You might get it used 3 times. Again, it's the same with any fight. Know when the ring is going to be used. Know to the second when it's going to be used. I use Final Verdicts on this fight. Not everyone does. I'm not saying this is definitely the way to go, but it's what I use. It's the most flexible, especially when you're getting rammed with Fel Surge, for goodness sake. Wouldn't like to be trying to muck about with Seraphim. But it's still important to know when the ring is going to be popped to make sure you can use Avenging Wrath. Now, when it comes to the Fell Surge, minimising the time away from the boss is very much affected by the tactics you adopt. Now, I've experienced two main ones. Everyone in melee range of the boss, ranged and healers included, with the only exceptions being those mages and hunters baiting the chains. The second one is ranged and healers at range, but with the baiting team a bit further out. In the first case, you're able to control where the void spawns go. In the second, it's a bit more random. Now, that can result in the demonic gateway being covered by void spawn or shadow puddles. Obviously, that makes it more difficult to use. The other problem is that you can only use the gateway once every 2 minutes anyway, and it's limited to use to you if you're constantly getting Fell Surge. So what this means is you have to give careful consideration to the movement talent. Do you go Long Arm of the Law? Do you go Speed of Light? Now, Long Arm of the Law will be there to give you a quick boost both there and back every time. However, if the boss has to be moved for whatever reason, and it easily might, it will inevitably move away from the drop-off point, then you probably won't get there with your Long Arm of the Law. Now, Speed of Light will get you there, unless you're faced with something like this. Aha. But it will not be available for every Fell Surge. That is the problem. Now, if you're lucky, or you're able to engineer a reduced incidence of getting Fell Surge, then that might not be a problem. It's a case of suck it and see. Decide for yourself which is the safest to use. If you're getting absolutely rammed by Fell Surge, I sometimes decide to go with Long Arm of the Law, because when you need to get it at that drop-off point, it's quite near the start of the fight. Unless something goes wrong, the boss realistically shouldn't have to be moved. And when you get towards the end of the fight, when the boss is being moved, you're not having to get it to that drop-off point, just well away from everyone else anyway. So, yeah, but decide for yourself. Now, in terms of trinkets, there's something to potentially be said for any of them. Obviously, you're going to use, I always take this as read, you are going to use your empty drinking horn as your standard trinket. So when I say trinket, I mean which other one. You can use the class trinket. I haven't really tried it that much. I have been tempted at times. Maybe I will. The thing is, you can be in danger of losing stacks when you're moving out for Fell Surge. And that happens to me a lot. I frequently use Discordant Chorus. It's useful even when the imps are up, because you've got the two mini bosses as well. It's only not all that useful during the final burn phase. Now, of course, if it's the final burn phase where you are wiping, then maybe it's not the best one to take. Maybe you would be better off with a class trinket. Or maybe Unending Hunger. Problem with Unending Hunger, in theory, over the course of the fight, it's pretty good. But will it line up with anything? Will it line up with when you absolutely need to be kicking the damage out? Or will you get it proccing every time you're on the way out of Fell Surge? You've just done a sneaky judgment on the boss. Yeah, that's the problem with that. So, again, try different ones. Light's Hammer is going to be more useful than Execution Sentence in general. Imp staying alive too long is an issue. It does cause wipes. So, just as for ranged, Void Spawns staying alive for a second or two longer than they should causes serious issues. For melee, we need to be making sure we're beasting the damage on the imps. That's our priority. As well as, of course, just making sure that if a stun doesn't look like it's coming in, or you're not absolutely certain and the cast got to halfway point, just interrupt them. But yeah, that's a cause of wipes as well. Okay, but just to summarise with Xhul'horac, you'll have to decide for yourself whether you want to pop your Avenging Wrath just before the imps spawn to get better damage on those imps, or whether it's not worth the risk because you might get Fell Surge. They often coincide with each other, not always. A little bit out. But you must get an Avenging Wrath saved up for the final 20% burn phase. Other thing to bear in mind on the burn phase is if, for a particular overwhelming chaos, there isn't a damage reduction cooldown like Barrier or something like that, save your Divine Protection for that. It would be a terrible shame if you died during the middle of Wings. Okay? But anyway, next time, it might be a week and a half or so for this one. But it will be Manoroth and Archimonde, the last two. Till then, see you later.